Here we are, guys. This is it. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. It's therapy hour with Birocratic. That's right. Time to talk out all your issues. Ask each other questions. Take some deep breaths. Whatever. Do a bunch of shit. My friends, this is where the real work happens, okay? This is where all the real work happens. When we're making music, when we're making music, it's like we're getting on the field to play. We need to be ready, we need to be prepared, we need to understand what's going to happen inside of us, emotionally, as we create from our hearts. It's very important. It's very important that we do this. And in service of that, we need to practice. Just as any athlete, as any professional of any kind must do. You go through training, you go through practice, right? Something that occurred to me recently was that it would be a lot of fun to practice together and to work through some of the common issues that plague producers the world over as they embark on the journey of making beats. It's your choice. You decide. I want to play a little game. Check this out, guys. Today's prompt. So here's what I recommend. This is what I'll ask of you, my lovely friends. Sorry. This is going well so far. I'm pretty happy about it. What I ask of you is to find something that you can write your thoughts down. It could be a pen and paper. It could be a pencil. It could be a clay tablet. It could be the Notes app on your phone. It could be the very device on which you are watching this. It's not important. What is important is that you have a little bit of time set aside, which we will engage in together, to answer the following question. Where in the process do you most often get stuck? And why? I'm going to give us a few moments to answer this question, then we're going to talk about it, because I think this might actually be quite helpful, you may find. Maybe it won't be, I don't know. I'm not a licensed therapist. Just so you know. There are 2 minutes and 37 seconds on the clock. Here we go. Let's ponder. How about that? Thank you for your submissions. I wrote down a few things myself that I'd love to talk about. But let's go through the chat, shall we? So LaFondi says, I think most of the time with finishing the last of the track and keeping it interesting. Most of my songs I make 80 to 90% and then I can't finish it. I do understand. Those last 20, 10, sometimes just 5% of progress can be extremely difficult and sometimes takes the most time, from my experience. And in addition to the most time, it also is the most emotionally taxing, or at least it can be. Because that's when the joy of making an idea and the creative high that comes with it starts to fade away and you get bogged down in the technical details. Things such as mixing and mastering. Very interesting. I'm sure you're not alone. I often get stuck there. I know a lot of my friends and other producers also get stuck there. I would love to hear what you have to submit, chat, as to techniques that you use in order to break through this block, and what it means when you get stuck at that point. I'm going to keep going through the chat. Little Treasure says, I tend to get stuck at like 95% done. I've noticed a theme. I get things almost all the way done, then I either get tired of them, think, oh, I should put this with some other things on an album, think, oh, I should try to submit this to a label / contest / etc., instead of just releasing them. I have so many songs like this. I just went through a process at the end of the year of clearing out a bunch of songs that fell into that category, and I feel like I'm doing it again. Well, damn, brother. That sounds frustrating. Definitely. So, to clarify, do you feel that your decision making gets paralyzed at the point when you're becoming ready to release or develop something into a release? Is that fair to say that once you are basically done with a record, it's the point at which you start thinking about how it's going to be translated into the world and how it's going to be shared? Is that what starts to trip you up? For clarification. Also, I will say, from my experience, that is very common. Alright, on to C. I often got stuck right at the beginning to find that one idea that really is going to get me going. That is what I wrote down as well. That tends to be one of the hardest parts for me. Omni also says that I agree, it's hard for me to start a song. Very understandable. Very understandable. What do you guys do when you need to start a song? What are some tips and tricks that you have? That's also something I'm going to go into in the beat making half of the stream. I'll have some ideas for how to start songs, or at least demonstrate one technique that I like to use. LaFondi says, also, sometimes I seem to need to just make choices and stick with them. Like sometimes throw away the whole project or a few layers, because otherwise I keep on going while it's rubbish in the first place. Also very normal, from my experience. Hello, Grayson. Good to have you. LaFondi, I totally understand. Sometimes throwing away the project is actually very cathartic. The difficult thing, but the important thing, is to understand when you're at a place where throwing it away may happen in the future, and preventing yourself from spending more time on an idea that you're not enjoying, just for the sake of trying to find the idea that will inspire you. That can be a very exhausting thing to chase, right? Chasing the idea that inspires you. And I think it's very important to understand when we're doing that in the process versus just making music for the sheer joy of it without any pressure to release it. Hamslice says, I often struggle with transitioning out of a 16-bar loop and getting into the meat and potatoes of a song and making it flow into a full song while also keeping it interesting. That can be really tough, and that can also be especially tough with instrumental music. To be fair, with instrumental music, which is by and large what we make here at Bread and Butter and Chill Hop, that is something we're always going to struggle with, I think. But as with everything, I think the important thing is to make sure that we are not boring ourselves. Because we have the ultimate barometer for what we find interesting. It doesn't matter what other people find interesting if you don't find it interesting. If you don't find it interesting, nobody else will. Well, that's not true. Maybe someone will. LaFondy responds, yes, that's exactly it, and then it just is easy to let the project be and start another thing. Absolutely. Isn't that the idea? Scar, just roll with it, man. Hello, Richie Wolf Cooper, how are you? Welcome. What is different then? LaFondy, I'm not sure what you're asking. What is different? In what sense? Little Treasure says, I don't know that I'm paralyzed. I just keep waiting for more tracks to show up that match the vibe so I can put them together into an album. But I don't know why I have this need to put together some sort of statement as an album instead of just releasing the songs as they come to me. Maybe that's worth exploring. Why do you think that an album is the best way to put music out? Maybe you have favorite albums in your past that you really like, and maybe you think albums are a really cool way to release music. Maybe it's as simple as that. Right? I don't know. I will say there is a certain market force in Spotify that, among other streaming platforms, that really push the idea of releasing singles and like very consistent shorter releases, and it rewards and incentivizes that approach, which basically means the album is dying, which indicates to me that it's probably not an external thing, it's probably just an internal force that's like, hey, you should release an album, which is okay. Sometimes you just gotta roll with that, you know? But it's a lot of pressure, but it's also kind of cool, and I think we can all rise to that pressure too. Modesty says, I just do X number of ideas until one really hits, or turn off the computer. Yo, fair. Very fair. Very, very fair. Yeah, some days guys, some days I sit down and make beats and it is just a giant pile of trash. Poopy, drippy trash. And that's fine. That's honestly, those are the best days because I know a good day is coming up. When things are going well, I know that's not gonna last. It's just, it doesn't last. It doesn't really last. There's always gonna be a day. It's usually like 2/3 of the time. It's pretty good. And then one out of every 3 days in the studio is just garb. It's honestly garb. Garbaggio. Yeah. Oh, that was your response to Scar. Okay, I understand. Little Treasure says, I'm an elder millennial, so I have an unhealthy attachment to the concept of an album. I think that probably explains a big portion of it. Yeah, I understand. I feel very much the same way about things, so I think that's something that you know, or we should either, you know, reckon with and just be like, alright, shit, I just want to make an album. It is what it is. And I'm gonna try, and it's not gonna be perfect. No album ever is. But I could give it a shot. Or you just say, hey, fuck it, that's just something like I'm used to from when I grew up and I had some favorite albums, and maybe I want to do that someday, but maybe now is not the time. Maybe that pressure is too much, and maybe my music is suffering for it, and I'm not having as much of a good time as if I just released a bunch of singles, which I can do right now. And frankly, Spotify and whatnot makes that better. It makes that incentivized. For what that's worth. Yeah, it's a hard thing to get over. I definitely also have felt that feeling myself, that I would love to, like, my main driver is to make an album. Always. And it's hard to do that. There's a reason I haven't released an album in a long time. It's because it's hard. And I find that, like, you never really know what the album's gonna be like. And when you start thinking about albums, you start thinking about, like, oh, I need to release this album. Or, like, I've got a collection of songs, and they're starting to form an album, but I don't know exactly, like, I still want to make more, I still need more music for this album. That's when I start to get in my head about, oh shit, like, how do I make something else that's going to fit this vibe that I already have going on? And I find that I just need to completely delete that mentality and that expectation and simply make more songs. Find whatever inspires me at that moment. Make more of it. And maybe I ride that inspiration wave for a few days to weeks, and then it goes somewhere else. And it's annoying because I wish it would just be easy, but it's usually not easy. It's usually kind of difficult, and you have to keep searching and stay inspired and stay motivated. And that's the real hard work, I think, of doing this as a profession and as a following this as your passion, I think. And especially when you're trying to play the game, release things, gain notoriety, gain a following, all those sorts of things. It's tricky, but worth exploring, I think. It would be nice to make an album. I agree. I am really in the process right now of trying to gear up for an album myself, in a way that I find compelling, right? I want to make something that people are going to listen to from start to finish. And I think one of the first concessions I had to make was understanding, when I go to make an album, that people's attention spans are not what they used to be, myself included. It is so rare that I sit down nowadays and listen to an album for any more than 15, 20 minutes. It's hard for me to get through a single, full-length album at this point in my life. I don't know if you guys feel that way. The only way that I do it is in the background, and I don't find that to be the most satisfying way to listen to music myself. I don't know if you guys feel that way. We are on the Chill Hop bread and butter stream. I say this knowing fully well that a lot of the music that we all make is both destined to become categorized as background music and is inspired by things that are categorized often as background music. Although, of course, we can see beyond that label. As musicians and as producers, we understand there's more to it than just its purpose. What's up, Giuseppe? How are you? But my point being, what is my point? Maybe it's for you to decide. No, my point is that attention spans are short, and there is and this is mostly for Little Treasures and Lefondi, who we were talking about the idea of making albums and the pressure to make an album. That there is middle ground between a single and an album. It is possible, right, to make a 3-song EP that has the ambition to be like that you still put the album mentality into, but it's just shorter. Like, you can find the middle ground. I know that sounds obvious maybe, but I think if you're stuck on some idea of what an album is as some large body of work that you collect songs over the course of a very long time, you can still break that into smaller projects and maybe make them thematically related through the release process. That's something I tried to do with my Beats albums several years ago. They were the first one was 6 songs, the second one was 8 songs. It was just the music that I was working on at the time, and I found a nice track list from start to finish that I thought flowed together, and I put those out. And over time, they got bigger and longer and bigger, and to a point when I realized, okay, maybe I don't need to keep just making these longer. Maybe that's not actually worth it. Maybe I need to just focus on making them better and more compelling. And then I started releasing singles. And part of me was unsatisfied by that, so now I'm in a place where I'd like to go back to making albums, but want to do so in a way where it feels like it will be appreciated based on the terms of what people's listening habits tend to be these days. It's a process of making compromise, for sure. But something I think that's worth making. Levandi says, is the popularity of releasing singles more from the last years? Of course. I mean, Sleepy Fish, for instance, has released multiple albums and not that much singles, but it's been a while since he released. That's correct. And bigger artists seem to release album more than single releases. Yes, it completely depends upon your place in the industry, and your popularity. You'll notice that Sleepy Fish will release an album in part because he is able to do so on Chill Hop, which is a label that is well known for and expected to promote music and release music that sounds great as background music for many different scenarios. So if you release a large body of work with many songs, there is a high degree of probability that that music will be streamed a lot. And it is a savvy artist who will take advantage of that and make a lot of music to be released on this label, among other labels, of course, that will take advantage of the fluke in the system, or the anomaly that is a label like Chill Hop, that will release music and people will listen to the entire album because they are often putting it on in the background, right? So it's a different kind of listener than, say, someone who is listening to music for its, for its expression of emotion and the artist's inner truth. It's a different story. It's a different type of listener. It's a different type of purpose, different type of entertainment. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? And I think what has happened is because the tools for making music have become easier to get your hands on, more people are making music, which means that the music landscape is more saturated with artists who are vying for people's attention. And in order to gain more notoriety, people resort to releasing smaller projects more often to give themselves more chances to reach new listeners, which may or may not be common sense to you. I apologize if it is, but that's the idea, that at least how I understand it. And streaming as an economy rewards that kind of releasing. So it becomes a cycle. Hamslice says, I've seen the waterfall style of releasing music getting more popular. That is, releasing single after single after single until the whole album is released. It's good for Spotify algos too. That is exactly why it is done. It is not done for any other reason than because it is good for streaming. So that you can release a single, and then another single, and when you release that second single, this is what waterfalling is by definition. When you release the second single to an album that's about to come out, you basically release an EP product. That's the second single followed by the first single that was already released. So it's a 2-track EP. The next time you release a song, you release that as an EP product. That's 3 songs. It's the newest single and then the 2 next oldest singles in a row. So what happens is when you go and click on the single, instead of listening to just the one song that came out, and then Spotify moves the algorithm along somewhere else, you listen to 1 or 2 or 3 or however many more songs you've released thus far in the waterfall album release process, and you capture that many more streams because people are clicking on your EP product, your waterfall singles, and they're listening through all of them before Spotify goes to the radio mode, the algorithmic selections based on what you were just listening to. So it's very much to capture more streams. That is the reason that happens. Does that make sense? I hope I explained that well in a way that is informative. Yeah, Rumi, you make a great point. When Spotify established pitching as a means of discovery and set the rule that only 1 song per release could be pitched, well, okay, then I'm just going to pitch every song one by one over the course of several weeks. Yeah, very, very much for capitalist reasons. Most of the stuff is for reasons that come down to it's going to make more money and or more streams and or game the system the way that the app is designed in order to ensure that we are grabbing the biggest slice of this pie that we can. That's usually the reason why any changes in the way that music is released or consumed ends up happening. So, yeah, it's maybe a bit cynical, but unfortunately it's pretty true. Beach Promo says it makes sense. There are artists for which I'll make sure to sit down and listen to their album start to finish, and other which a shuffle would work fine. Absolutely. Two different kinds of artists, two different kinds of albums, and you're going to approach them differently as a listener, you know? For example, I know that, like, I don't know, like when Kendrick Lamar releases an album for me, that's probably something I'm gonna like sit down, I'm gonna like text my friends and we're gonna all listen to it at the same time if we're not in the same place. And we're gonna, you know, oh shit, the drop in this song is crazy, dude, like this beat is wild, like did you hear that bar? Crazy, you know, it's gonna be more of an event because we care about this artist and what he has to say, at least at some point. And then there's artists where it's like, oh cool, new thing, let me put it on while I do my dishes. You know, and if something really perks my ear up, awesome, I'll go check it out or I'll add it to a playlist. But that's it. It's really like a more functional experience or an accoutrement to the rest of life. But not necessarily something you'll put on in the car when you want to vibe out with your friends and like have a great time as you begin a road trip, you know. It's more introverted music maybe. I don't know. LaFondi says, like, I haven't been releasing for that long and I'm figuring out what steps are best. Seems to be shopping at different labels or doing it independent and promote a lot on social media. But yeah, I still have no idea how to do it all at the fast pace that seems to be needed, so I have accepted the idea that I won't have enough time to build much audience. Why am I getting used to his voice now? Damn straight. That was the idea. It starts out weird and then it stops being weird, because we're just having a conversation. Anyway. Here's if you'll allow me to give some advice from what I've seen, having released music for a little while. And this is also the advice I've been given quite a bit, and every time I've followed it, it has done me well. Just release a lot, and don't really worry too much about maximizing its potential. I think it's really harmful to artists how soon in their careers we tend to encourage artists to care about the size of their following. I just don't think it's that important, more so than developing your voice as an artist and making sure it's actually something that you want to do. Because it's a difficult thing. I think that the best thing you can do is release a lot of music that makes you happy and that you're proud of, and not give two shits about how it comes out or how many people listen to it. That is, I think, the most important thing, from what I've seen. And I do not always live by my own advice. Maybe that's why I'm giving it. But if you are concerned, like, first of all, no one is making you make music. We all do this because we want to, right? Ideally. And sometimes we have outside pressure, and sometimes, you know, even, look guys, if this stream is pressure, you know, like, don't show up, like, it doesn't matter, you know. Be here because you want to be here, be making music because you want to make music. What we need in the world is more people who make music because they want to and they have something to say, right? And if it's just because it's fun, that's good too. But recognize that it's for fun, and that you don't need to make it your, like, side hustle. It doesn't need to garner hundreds of thousands of views in order to be valid. It's valid because you did it and you wanted to do it and you completed it. It's the task, the completion of the task alone is worth celebrating, truly. Just as, for example, to share something from my personal life. My father retired recently and he's taken up painting, which I think is awesome. It's very cool. I love getting to talk to my dad about the artistic process. Obviously, it's something I really enjoy talking about. And it's been very interesting seeing him understand how to incorporate the artistic and creative process into his life, which for so long was built around trying to provide for his family. And very grateful for my dad for prioritizing that. But now he's shifting his priorities as he develops a fondness and a passion for painting towards how do I just make myself happy and do stuff that I'm interested in. And it's been fascinating to see. And at the end of the day, he's happy when he finishes a painting and he takes a picture of it and puts it on Instagram. And some of his friends and family members say, hey, great job. Looks awesome. The accolades don't mean anything to him, as they shouldn't, and as they won't for any of us. Accolades, they're nice to hear, but they don't really mean anything. The important thing for him is that he's challenging himself and he's completing his work. And I think the same thing is true for musicians. The important thing is that we are doing what we love, we're following what we're inspired by, and that we're completing the work. Beyond that, everything else is gravy, right? Like, what else do we need? No one can take that from us. If we love what we do and we enjoy the opportunity to do it, who needs to hear it? Really, does anyone? I don't know. I don't think so. I just don't think so. That's me. Maybe it's not you. I don't know. We'll see. But I just think I think there's a lot to be said for making yourself happy and not really worrying about what the best approach is for something that's, creative and personal. And that's that. Okay, guys. This has been Biro's Therapy Hour. The first of perhaps many. We'll see. I'm gonna go back to the regular stream, but thank you for joining. Signing off. Me with the tiny mic. Cheers.